Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 43 of Raft Stuff. It's a visit to the Cumberland Plateau of eastern Tennessee in search of the elusive waterfall. Hi, this is Ralph Roberts, and this is Potter's Falls on Crooked Creek on the Cumberland Plateau of eastern Tennessee. On October 12, 2007, Pat and I decided to make a trip down to the Cumberland Plateau and shoot some waterfalls. We had a wonderful trip and definitely are going back. In fact, we have to go back, as I'll tell you shortly. But a lot of people don't realize that Tennessee has more than one set of mountains. Of course, almost everyone's familiar with the Great Smoky Mountains, shared with North Carolina, but there's also the Cumberland Plateau, which is really part of the Appalachian Range also, but it's separated. And we went through Oak Ridge and then down along the Cumberland Plateau through the mountains to Chattanooga and back to Asheville. But we had a good trip. Unfortunately, due to the drought conditions, the waterfalls weren't up to snuff, so to speak. In fact, they were mere dribbles of themselves, but so we'll have to go back and reshoot everything for our series Waterfalls of the Southern Highlands, of which Cumberland Plateau is mentioned being part of the Appalachians, is also meets that definition, the Southern Highlands. So we will come back, but in the meantime, since we did shoot some footage of Potter's Falls especially, I wanted to share that with you. Yeah, I thought you might enjoy it as we drive here between Highway 60 over across country to where Potter's Falls are located. It's actually two sets of falls there, Potter's and Lower Potter's, and we do get both of them in this segment for your viewing enjoyment. Beautiful, beautiful country through here, much like around Asheville, surrounded by mountains. And unfortunately a bit dry, although it still looks pretty nice, and the leaves were just starting to hint that they would be changing. And I'm not sure. Oh, there's one up ahead that has changed some, but of course the drought's affecting the color both here around Asheville where I live and also in eastern Tennessee. This is really more towards middle Tennessee. It's about 50 miles or so west of Knoxville. And Potter's Falls is located about 2 miles below Wartburg, Tennessee. That's the name of the town, although it's a very nice little town. We went through it, W-A-R-T, Wartburg, Tennessee, here on the Cumberland Plateau. And if you've ever taken I-40 between Asheville and Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, the capital city of Tennessee, then you've, as you pass Crossville and went on towards Cookeville, Tennessee, you've definitely gone up and over the Cumberland Plateau, and you should have noticed it because it's mountainous through there. Okay, we're turning right onto the road that Crooked Creek is located on. I may be wrong, but I seem to remember that this is called Crooked Creek Road for very good reasons. And here's the bridge over Crooked Creek. And we're looking, and sure enough we see the falls down there, so I'm going to cross the bridge and park, and we'll be ready to start filming the falls. We're driving the Lieutenant Colonel. Those of you who watch my show Rapid Ralph Runs the Roads know about the Lieutenant Colonel and carrying the GPS unit, which is the small silver box there above the dash. And she's in contact with 7 or 8 satellites at all times. She's global positioning satellites and tells us exactly where to go. So we didn't have any trouble finding the falls. We just followed directions. This area is under surveillance. All illegal dumpers will be prosecuted. The reason for that, and we'll see that a bit closer up also as we begin looking at Potter's Falls, is people put a lot of graffiti and stuff under the bridge as well as dump trash, and it's a shame they do it in such a gorgeous area of natural beauty, but they do. A few yahoos everywhere you go, unfortunately. Potter's Falls is normally a lot more than this, and again, as I mentioned earlier, we have the drought conditions, so we're not getting the full effect of the falls. In fact, we were a little shocked when we got here and saw how little water there is. As soon as we drop out again to a wider shot, I'll sketch in for you what the falls normally look like. But we're getting some interesting stuff that we might actually use in the show, although the bulk of the segment on Potter's Falls and Waterfalls of the Southern Highlands will be when the falls has a lot more water. Much more exciting that way, and that's what people expect to see in a waterfall show. Here we go, coming back out again. Normally that's one of the places where water's coming down, but normally the falls go all the way across. As I zoom in to show you the interplay of the water splashing off the rocks and hitting the water. A lot of fish in that water too. That's awesome. So a lot of people like to go fishing up and down these rivers and creeks. This is actually a creek. For those of you who don't know mountain talk, there's a wide view that I promised you. And normally the water's all the way across instead of just in the two areas we're showing. But the difference, for those of you who don't know mountain talk, between a creek, a river, and a branch is that a river's big, a creek's small, and a branch is even smaller. So there you got it. They're all streams. And you can see there's one area of major activity to the right, and then the little bit of water that's snuck over and is coming down here to the left. But normally it comes down, and I've seen photos of it that full blast, and it's a lot wider than this. Potter's Falls. Pat is also filming. We have two cameras, and she's at a different angle than I am, and during this show I only used the film from my camera just because it was handy. In the regular waterfall shows, we have shots from varying angles. Fremont Brown is our co-producer on that, and he has a camera also, so we usually have a 3-camera shoot for those. However, it's too bad that we didn't have that, didn't have a greater flow of water here, but it's still very enjoyable. This falls are out in the midst of nowhere, essentially. Although relatively close to town, this is still a small country road in a very isolated area. And we didn't see anyone else while we were here, so we had it all to ourselves. This is being shot at probably around 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's starting to get pretty late. We didn't leave Asheville till about 1 o'clock, but we're still less, even though we're over here in Middle Tennessee, we're still less than 3 hours from Asheville to reach this. We drove on I-40 most of the way, and then took 640 around Knoxville to avoid the traffic, and then turned on Highway 60 and went up through Oak Ridge and Clinton and big towns like that, and coming cross country over here to Crooked Creek, where we're now watching the water, what water there is, come over the rocks and down. Those of you who have seen our waterfall shows on the waterfalls in North Carolina, and the ones in Georgia also, will note a big difference in Tennessee Falls. And when we have several filmed, you'll see they're mostly plunging falls. That's a type of waterfall like this that essentially goes straight down the side of a cliff and hits the water straight down. It's with very little rocks in the way of the flow of the water. It's what most people think of a waterfall, although there are a lot more waterfalls that are the cascade type, where the water goes down a slope over lips of rocks and so forth until it hits the water, the pool at the bottom. Pools at the bottom of waterfalls are called plunge pools. And of course one like this is pretty nice and placid, but when waterfalls are really pouring a few tons of water a minute over the lip and hitting the plunge pool, you do better stay out of it, because it puts some really serious currents and undertows in the plunge pool, and a number of people you hear in the news die every year at waterfalls because they don't understand things like that. The two main dangers at waterfalls are slick rocks at the top, where people slip and go over, and getting in the plunge pool at the bottom, falling in or whatever, stupidly jumping in and getting caught in undertows and banged against rocks and being injured or worse. So that's my safety lecture. Enjoy waterfalls, but respect them. Nature is very, very powerful. A lot of people don't realize that. But the hydrological power of falling water full of kinetic energy being expended is, well, they build power plants that way too. So you got to be careful around it. But again, it was beautiful here. Was relatively quiet except for the occasional dog bark or car pacing, and there were very few of those, so just a wonderful place to commune with nature. Truly a wonderful experience to be out and see sights like this. Getting back to the Cumberland Plateau for a moment, I always like to be informative. The Cumberland Plateau, according to the Wikipedia, the online free encyclopedia, is the southern part of the Appalachian Plateau. So it's really part of the Southern Highlands, and thus meets the definition for the waterfalls that we shoot, which is good because it adds several hundred more waterfalls that we can potentially go for. The Cumberland Plateau includes much of eastern Kentucky and western West Virginia, part of Tennessee, the eastern middle type part, and a small portion of northern Alabama. We're going to be shooting waterfalls in Alabama also. The terms Allegheny Plateau and the Cumberland Plateau both refer to the dissected plateau lands lying west of the main Appalachian Mountains. Essentially, they're saying that it's an offshoot of the Appalachians. So when you go through Knoxville, you're going across a huge valley and getting back into the mountains again. The terms stem from historic usage rather than geological difference, so there's no strict dividing line between the two. Two major rivers share the names of the plateau, with the Allegheny River rising in the Allegheny Plateau, that's up north, and the Cumberland River rising in the Cumberland Plateau. So we were close to the Cumberland River. Okay, a lot more information about that we don't need since it concerns up in Kentucky and everything. We were down in Tennessee, lower Tennessee, in that middle eastern part, as I said, or eastern middle part would probably be a more politically correct way of saying it these days, as we look at water coming over the lip of the falls. And there's Pat. Hey, Pat. Pat's got our other cameras going around finding good viewpoints and setting the tripod up. We found out the hard way when we first started doing video years ago. You got to have tripods, otherwise you don't get a steady picture, and people might put up with a little jerky movement occasionally, But if you want them, as we pan over towards the waterfall again, but if you want them to actually watch your stuff, you better make it a little smooth, otherwise people get car sick. Even sitting in their home on the couch watching TV. So you got to do it right. And panning back across the falls and pulling back out. And there's Pat down the right, shooting the falls, which is up to the left. Just again, just an absolutely gorgeous place and wonderfully peaceful to be. Another view of the falls, and of course, it's impressive, at least according to the photographs I've seen, when there's water all the way across through there after there's been some rains and so forth. But we got to make do with what we got today. And at least we got in good practice, and I'm getting a good Raft Stuff out of it, which I hope you're enjoying. Raft Stuff, of course, this program is my experimental program. Here, I wanted to talk about this. This is despicable. This is just totally uncalled for. People doing graffiti in a place like this is almost like desecrating a church. This is God's Church of Natural Beauty. So it's unforgivable. If I ever catch anybody doing it, they definitely gonna get to talk to the law about doing things like that. It's just uncalled for. But back to nature as we look at the wonders of water coming down. Our mood returns from anger to just plain old enjoyment. There is something wonderful about watching waterfalls, and in fact, any of the four elements, as the ancient Greeks defined them, of fire, earth, water, and air. We love to watch weather, we love to watch waterfalls, we love to sit and stare into a good crackling fire, and we love just walking around out on the ground, the beauties of earth and the vegetation and all that. So maybe the Greeks knew something, I don't know. Oh, of course they did. The golden age of Pericles and Aristotle and the great playwrights like Euripides and his cousin Euripides. That's a playwright joke. Sorry, but anyway, the Greeks influenced our modern Western civilization quite a bit with their philosophy, etc. But back to falling water, hitting rocks. It's been doing this for many thousands of years right here. That's why the rocks are so smooth now. The water's worn them away for century upon century upon century. And it's still coming, and even though we're in drought now and there's not much water, you can be assured that the weather will come back and we'll get the torrents of rain again. I think they're saying maybe not to December, but anyway, that's 2 months from when we filmed this, but they'll come back. I suspect it might not be until next spring before we get back here to Potter's Falls, but we'll definitely be back to get it the way it should be filmed. That's a nice fountain of nature coming down, hitting the rocks, jumping off into the plunge pool there. A lot of wooded area on the Cumberland Plateau. That's one of the things it's known for. And a lot less development than around Asheville, although you're beginning to see some as we move back out again. And if you look down into the water, you can see rocks and so forth down in the water. The water was reasonably clear. Maybe not from this angle, but from the the angle that previously. It's here comes Pat back up. And we have to pack a lot of equipment into these places. It takes a little effort. This is Lower Potters Falls, which is just a few hundred feet down the stream from Potters Falls. Again, the drought, because of the drought, there's hardly any water coming over it. It's rather impressive when water conditions are more normal than they are now. You can see it's been etching on the rocks, of course, for thousands of years, like the hole there in the to the right that we just panned over. And that rock holding up the big rock, that's cool. You can see the rocks have been smooth. Sometimes the water gets up that high, and those rocks didn't just grow there. Something moved them, and it was probably a lot of water that did that over the eons. Lower Potter Falls is really a cascade. There's at least two main levels that goes down, and then it goes down again. You can see the rocks in the bottom there. It goes down again after down below this. So that's called a cascade instead of just one straight fall. It goes down, and in this case in steps, but sometimes just like in a shallow angle, and that's still called a waterfall. There's a lot of definitions of waterfalls. I've gone over those in Waterfalls of the Southern Highlands several times, so I won't bore you with those technicalities here. And I'm set up on the rocks here, and Pat's actually across the stream shooting, and she got some very good stuff. Another close-up of there's a close-up of that hole that I mentioned earlier. I was trying to see what was in there, but couldn't see anything but water in there, and I guess that's what it is. There's some nice caves along the Cumberland Plateau too. A lot more limestone than there is in the mountains around Asheville, so a lot more caves. In fact, the first falls we went to, no, it was the second falls we went to the next morning. We stayed the night in Harriman, Tennessee. It's called Lost Falls, and near Lost Falls is a cave that actually has a waterfall coming across it, but you can actually go in and explore the cave. It's pretty open, and we got some footage of that also. Unfortunately, again, we had the same problem here. The flow of water just wasn't enough to use in that waterfall show, but we will be back. If we look at the, if you look closely, you can see bugs flying around. We got pretty good cameras. In fact, we shoot all these, the waterfall shows in high definition. So there's an immense amount of detail. Unfortunately, in this show that we're broadcasting, that you're watching, we've had to down convert the high definition, which is the newest thing, down to what's called standard definition, so it can be broadcast. So we've lost a lot of the detail, but of course we still have it, and eventually it'll be put out when high definition TV becomes more common. You can see the placid pool, but beneath Lower Potters Falls. When high definition becomes more prevalent on broadcast, we can always re-show it then, and we'll have it's called future proofing. And okay, that water is relatively deep, by the way. Both pools, the one below Potters Falls itself, and also the one here at Lower Potters Falls. And good place to go fishing. Indeed. Maybe I should start carrying a rod and reel along with me too, except a lot of the times we go to waterfalls is excuse me, not during fishing season, so I'd have to be careful, I guess. Better not do that. Better be nice. The smooth rock that in some way got put on top of those rocks there. And maybe in the next few hundred years it'll get washed right off of there and down into the pool. I don't know. But I surmise that could be the truth of what will happen. If I may predict it, I will. I predict it. And some of those rocks up on top are going to come off too. Check back in about 3,000 years if you don't believe me and see. Okay, enough for predictions. I'll predict that. I will not predict the presidential election, for example. Who knows what's going to happen in that. Okay. So this is the upper part of Lower Potter Falls. I'm not sure who Potter Falls were named after. It wasn't Harry Potter, although they are definitely a wizard of a falls. But they've been known for some time, from back in the early 19th century when this area was first settled to now. The water keeps coming, but should be all the way across that lip rather than just at those 2 or 3 places, depending on how you divide up the wide flow on the left. And I've moved closer to the falls now. It's starting to get a little dark, and this is not the best video I could have shot because I'm pushing the gain up to get it without. Of course, we don't have any lights with us, so I couldn't light this up. Look how clear that water is. That's really neat. A little jerk there. I wouldn't allow that to stay in for the waterfall show, but we're just home folk here, so I won't worry about it or be embarrassed by it. Oh, there's another one. I'm sorry, I should have edited this a little closer. We don't normally allow stuff like that. Looking down into the water, watching the ripples caused by the water from the falls hitting the little pool here. There's some trash. Don't leave trash, folks. Pick it up. We can't police up everything. So whatever you take in, bring it back out with you. Leave nothing but footprints, as the admonition goes from the Park Service and the naturalists. And they're correct. These beauties of nature belong to all of us. Let's keep them clean and enjoyable for everybody. And no cotton picking graffiti on the bridges, okay? Here we go. And we're coming to the end of the show. This has been very enjoyable for us, and I hope for you also. And I'm glad we could share it with you. From the Cumberland Plateau in eastern Tennessee, or eastern middle Tennessee, however you want to define it, in the highlands of the southern mountains. This is Ralph Roberts reporting to you from Lower Potters Creek Fall. And we hope you get a chance to visit someday, and that the water will be a lot higher than it is now. Go to ralphwroberts.com to see this show again.